Yo everyone, welcome back to another video. Okay, so today we are talking a little bit more in depth about Zoroark. I have gotten a lot of smoke from last video because I used AI to the thumbnail. I am sorry for those of you who got hurt by that. The reason for my use of AI was so I could get a thumbnail done, because I don't have the time usually to do a thumbnail every single video, and so I used AI for that one. I am now in the process of getting a legitimate art student to make thumbnails for the future. So there's gonna be some changes to that. No more AI for thumbnails. So yeah, hope you guys are happy. So into the important part of the video, we are looking at Zoroark today. In Zoroark, we talked about it last time. It's a very good deck, but there's also different versions of it. In Zoroark is very versatile, and therefore I would like to go in depth with what is this versatility actually doing, which versions of the deck exist, and like how do you play around it. So the traditional version is just the classic Zoroark Toolbox. There is the most flexibility here. This is what the last Zoroark that placed high was playing, and this is very close to a like classic end box. You still have the flexibility of putting in Damanitan. You use Mega Lopunny as a sort of secondary attacker if needed. You have Turos, you have the boss's order. Like, you have a lot of tools here to work with. But it's not like anything that is mind-blowing or overwhelming, and it's not as flashy as you expect. So what makes this deck good is the maximum flexibility. It has strong price trade versus EX decks because Zoroark is relatively beefy and Treasure Ram makes you allowed to one-shot them. You have the Cleffa, so you can draw up and still be viable if you have a bad starting hand. And it's good into a little bit more unknown metas. If you don't know what people are playing, it's very good. And it's easy to take. What is I would say about this deck is the weaknesses is it has a very high skill ceiling. Personally, I don't like the Lopunny line, as you see, the Baneri Lopunny. And if you misplay, it can punish you very hard because you only have one int PP up, one E switch. You don't have any way of searching out your energy with this deck. You don't have any night stretchers. There's a lot of lack of flexibility in that point where you are like, okay, these cards I don't have in the regular list, maybe I should add them to the list and stuff like that. So it's very high skill ceiling, but there is a lack of like some fundamental resources in my opinion, and lack of acceleration. They run the 4-4 line. I prefer the 4-3 line, to be fair. So yeah, but it's a decent starting point for a Zoroark box. Now we go into a more aggressive tempo box. If you look at this one, we have a few additions. We have an extra Baneri, which means Baneri will be more consistent setup into Lopunny. It's easy at least. We have Yveltal to retreat lock and damage a bit. The reason for Yveltal actually making it to aggressive tempoed list and not the regular one is because Yveltal is great at dealing with Badu. It's great to like set up the early game, and it has a lot of fun like stuff it can do. We have Pecharon to switch around and make certain that you can swap Zoroark back to the bench and then switch it back in and hit people that way. But we still lack some of the like retrieval options. We run two Super Rods, one Night Stretcher, and one NSPP up. But no Energy Search again, and two Evos instead of three, and one Mana Balloon instead of two. So a little bit the same framework. It has a faster start because you can use Yveltal to retreat lock and stuff like that. And it's better into the setup decks. Like these decks that takes that sweet time about the game, it works way better into those. It forces them to respond early because you would at turn 3 have 2 or 3 Zoroarks down, an Treasure Ram, a Toadstool, and stuff like that going. So people are forced to answer what you are doing. And it can steal games quickly if it's like getting this early tempo. The thing I don't like that much is there's less room for tech in this version because you need the watchtower to make certain that these aggro Noctowl line decks doesn't pop off. This everything with Pidgeot doesn't pop off. So there's some lines there that means you need to have a little bit more set in stone. And it runs out of resources. Again, you see only 7 energy. In Zoroark takes 2, only 1 PP up, only 1 E switch. So you don't really have the acceleration of energy in the discard pile. So it runs out of resources sometimes because it focuses so much on a hard force early game. So it's fine, but not the ideal if you ask me. It can work into super slow metas like the one we have right now. It can work into. But let's look at the next one. This is the one I am personally leaning towards. This is the Control Zoroark. What is very interesting about this one is there's more options. We have Cornerstone, we have Damanitan, we have Maractus, Blood Moon. We still have the Toadstool line, we still have Reshiram. Theoretically, you can also put in a Zekrom, so we can use Damanitan as an attacker. Uh, and this is better into like this slower, greedier decks. Again, it has the same thing as this one has, that it can punish slow and greedy decks. This they just does very very different. One of them does it by forcing in the pressure at minute 1. This sort of Zoroark deck slowly builds up the pressure. It has excellent hand disruption because of how it can draw cards. It still has the Iono. What I have thought about adding would be a Judge. We have Ents PP up and 2 Nice Dredgers. I have cut it with Super Rods. I don't really think they are needed for this kind of deck. You need the resources to be, okay, I have them in my hand now. Now we can use them. Not to, I will put them into my deck and then I will wait for me to draw them. That's not how this deck works. If they make bad sequencing, you can easily punish it. And it has a very, very strong late game. You can easily get to a free Zoroark board with an Intreasure Ram and a Damanitan, or you can lock people down with Cornerstone Mask. You have Blood Moon to finish it off. You have Maractus to stall out. So very, very strong late game. Um, it does struggle a little bit into fast pressure, but again, the Cornerstone Mask helps a little bit about with that, and the Maractus can also help with that. And it requires very, very good game knowledge. It requires you to know when to do what. Um, and that's one of the main things about Zoroark. Zoroark is a very high game, like mentally challenging deck. You need to know how to play it and when to do what, and exactly what deck you're playing into. If you don't know that deck list, like 90% of it, before going into a game, this deck doesn't feel good. It feels like you are on the back foot from minute 1. Because you don't know what lines to go for, where, what to KO and when. And then it can feel a little bit clunky sometimes if you draw very bad. It's rare it happens, but it does happen. Now we have the meta-targeted Tech Zoroark. This one I don't have a list for, because this one changes all the time. It's excellent if you know the meta. That could be Insecrom in the list, it could be maybe 2 Cornerstones if that's needed, or could be Cut Blood Moon if that's not needed. Or it could be something like Lachas or Petulant. A lot of small changes to the list you can make just to make it feel like a meta-targeted slash tech Zoroark. And it can flip the bad matchup sometimes. It has a high surprise factor because of the extra tech you can put into it. I am working a little bit on like seeing how can you take out this deck. Some people are playing around with Mega Kangaskhan, which I don't think is needed because you already draw a lot of cards, so there's no need to draw extra cards. Um, the thing that makes this a bad option in my opinion, or not bad, but less ideal is it's risky if the meta shifts. I have done a few times where I tried to predict the meta. I built a Gengar back when to predict the meta. As soon as I got to the regionals, Golden Go and Ancient Box showed up. And in that case, the meta tech I have built in costed me everything. I could not compete with those kind of decks. And then they sometimes seem to be little bit less consistent overall when you have too many tech cards. So it's about finding this like nice overall, like, okay, this still is super consistent, but it does have the tech I need. And they are not ideal for ladder or blind events. So for example, like right now we see Ascended Heroes coming out. If I was supposed to go to a regional in this meta, I would go for this format, or this deck. The reason for this deck and not any like meta tech deck is because we don't know what the meta will bring. We are still waiting and seeing it develop, so for that reason I would go with this deck. Zoroark has a few universal weaknesses, and let's get into those. It has a very high decision density. You need to know what to discard, when to discard it, like, and what to play and when to use which supporter, when to use your counter catcher, because you only use one most of the time. And it requires a lot of matchup knowledge. I would say if you want to take Zoroark to a regional, put at least 200 games into that deck and have tested every single meta matchup at least 10 times, and ideally more. And then again, the poor sequencing loses games. What I'm meaning with poor sequencing is, let's say we have a board state where there's two Zoroarks, Monkidori, a Reshiram, and a Darumaka. And you have Secret Box, Brock Scouting, and some random other cards on the hand. And you are, instead of waiting and seeing what you draw off straight, you are just instantly slamming down your Brock Scouting just to find the Damanitan. In that case, you are not able to use other supporters now for that turn. That could have been a Boss's Order, that could have been an Iono, a Lily. But you decided, okay, I need to force down this Damanitan. It can be the right decision if you can see two low HP targets. Okay, I can one-shot these two. Then it's the correct decision to force down that Damanitan. But you can hold on to that Brock. There's no need to use it as the first option to find that Damanitan. You can draw it off your trades. Um, so I would rather you wait, trade a bit, and then use your resources. So there's a lot of sequencing that goes into this deck. So it's and for these three reasons, I would say it's not beginner friendly. If you are a beginner getting into a TCG, I would look not that much into a Zoroark deck, at least not the high skill Zoroark decks like Control and Aggressive Tempo. I would look into a very classic, down to earth Zoroark Toolbox. Because these are a little simpler to play, and as soon as you start understanding how the deck works, you can go into like some of the control or meta targeted. In general, I would stick away from the aggressive tempo Zoroark, unless the meta really says you need to be aggressive. Else I would go for something like a control lean Zoroark, in my opinion, that's the superior version of it, because you just have the infinite amount of tools. So yeah, but that's my take on Zoroark, and that is what I would say is like the big things to talk about when we're looking at Zoroark. I'm gonna try to like make a list for each version of Zoroark and like go in depth with each version. This was more of a like general idea about how can you build Zoroark. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like down below, subscribe, and thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out from here, stay safe and take care.